Well, hey Emmaus, I hope you had a Merry Christmas, and from all of us on the team here, we wish you a Happy New Year. As 2025 comes to a close, we want to just take a moment and acknowledge what we've seen God do in our midst in this last year, acknowledging some highs and some lows, and also walk through a reflection on Psalm 46, a passage that is a prayer of mine for us as we move into 2026. So first, the celebration, the highs. Thank you to every one of you who have made Emmaus your home church, and made it a place that exhibits God's goodness and His love to all around. So many of you are engaged with the work God's doing here in a joyful and serious way. That this is a place that you deeply care about, and that is so evident. And it's such a joy and an honor to get to be one of your pastors. So thank you. When we look back on what God's done in this last year, we realized how many of our prayers God answered, that were prayers that were really just longings that have materialized over this last year, particularly around the area of local mission and stepping out toward our neighbors in love. Jen Smith stepped up to volunteer in leading us in community engagement to show up in the city. And Lindsay Pilling has stepped up as well to volunteer in leading our Merry and Bright effort, an event that served families at Christmas and experiencing deep need. Over 47 of you volunteered. Thousands of dollars were given to make a Christmas for students who otherwise would have none. We added the ministry house to our lease here, our lease with Beaverton First. And it houses Safe Families as their office space, which is our partner ministry of ours. And our partnership with Safe Families has grown as well, not only in them being on our campus, but our very first Emmaus host family just got approved to take in kids just a couple weeks ago. And so we prayed that God would help us tell the story this year in more practical ways in the context of Beaverton. And so God's moved. He's also moved in you as we've also longed to walk together to a greater extent, to make more room for people to experience community. And so we've added 2 new communities this year, making more relational space for people other than just attending a gathering. We saw our youth ministry over the last 3 years. It's grown 3 times. And God's raised up in this last year a full team of volunteer leaders to come alongside and disciple. And we even saw the students themselves create and form a student-led worship team. And so God's moving in our youth as well. Men and women's Bible studies have started and grown. And in fact, our highest attended men's event is a 6 a.m. Bible study. Women continue to pour into one another's lives in our nurture groups. God's grace has just been all over Emmaus this last year. And one of His graces has been the fact that we've been able to fully fund ministry in 2025 through your partnership and generosity in doing gospel ministry with us. The state of the church feels healthy, and it feels poised for further kingdom work in 2026. Our staff was praying through our church a couple months ago, and we realized that we have roughly 300 people here, about 200 adults, probably a little bit more, and 80% of our people are in community groups. 70% are serving, and about 50% are giving on some level. That's a highly engaged church, and we're excited to see that just continue into 2026. This year, as we come around the corner into a new year, we have an opportunity to invite seekers as well. Those who are exploring questions of faith and who's Jesus, by the way. We're going to do that through our Alpha course. This bears repeating. We've said it before, but the majority of Portlanders are actually interested in learning more about Jesus. It might not seem like that from the headlines. It may not even seem like that from experience. But when asked, the majority of Portlanders are actually interested in Jesus, even if they have hang-ups about Christian faith in general or the church in particular. In fact, 85% of non-Christian folks say that they would go to church if they were invited. And only about 2% of Christians practice inviting their non-Christian friends and neighbors to church. And so what if in 2026 we saw that number changed? What if we saw, instead of 2% of Christians bothering, what if that jumped up 10 times, 20 times? But would you be a part of seeing the kingdom expand as we tell the story and invite friends and neighbors to belong and to seek the person of Jesus in community? Well, there's a lot to celebrate. There's also an acknowledgement that this year has brought profound loss as well. We lost little Molly Collinsworth, who was only in our world for a couple of hours and is now with the Lord. And after an 8-month battle with cancer, we lost Tammy Walter, who is also now with the Lord. These mark the presence of death in the congregation, which is a grief and causes us to lament. That grief and loss, even though we mourn as those with hope, grief and loss are real and a part of our story as a body this last year. Death is an enemy. And some of you continue to suffer illness and difficult relational pain, and some suffer in unseen ways, often leaving you maybe surrounded by people but still feeling lonely. Some of you carry heavy burdens for loved ones, walking alongside aging parents as their health fails, others facing financial hardship and job loss. I bring this up to say that our life as a community is mixed. There's the kingdom here now, and also the blunt reality of the kingdom not yet. And through it all, our team has had the front row seat to seeing how deeply and practically you love each other and walk alongside each other and extend the compassion of Christ through everyday acts of service. And here's where this is all pointing. I'm going somewhere with this. While there's a lot to celebrate and there's a lot to mourn and grieve, all of this points to the reality of God in our midst. God's among us. He's been present and continues to be. And there's a really big gap between a God concept and a God reality. I don't think that gap could be much bigger, actually. Every so often at the tap house, I will have customers who want to engage in religious or spiritual conversations. They want to share their thoughts, or they want to ask a meaningful question. A lot of them know I'm a pastor, some of them still don't. And part of my ministry there is to engage in the sincere questions. But I'm also learning that part of my ministry is to leave the insincere questions alone. And the other day, a couple of guys were debating. One guy wanted to share his journey with his life-changing spiritual journey at a spa, and somebody else was arguing another point. Anyways, it landed with one guy going, well, what's your God concept? What's your God concept? And I stayed out of it because I knew that neither were in a state of genuine interest and much more. But I thought to myself, what a sad reality to only have a God concept. The God concept is no God, actually. In the gospel, we have a God reality, that God made flesh. What John says in 1 John 1, what we have seen and heard and touched, that we proclaim to you. We have a God reality. The God concept is well, it's smaller than you because it's your concept. And so it's no God at all. It's an idea which is technically subservient to you. It's just conceptual. But the gospel proclaims a God reality, a reality outside us, beyond us, bigger than us. And that's what the psalmist describes in Psalm 46. He says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. The first stanzas of Psalm 46 describe a reality. Ideas are not refuges. Concepts don't supply strength. Only persons, practical, real people. How does the psalmist relate to God? He says, you're a refuge. You're a reality. You're a strength. You're something that causes me to set aside fear even though I'm facing chaos in creation. And not just chaos in creation, but chaos even in the city. The next stanzas talk about the nations raging, the kingdoms tottering. He, Yahweh, utters his voice and the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. You see, the psalmist describes the presence of God as if to say, look, you may face chaos in nature, but what about the rage of mankind? Humans bring chaos too. Is there anything God can do in the midst of human chaos? Well, the psalmist describes Yahweh as a reality. Whether it's political chaos of nations raging or economic chaos of kingdoms tottering, the social disturbance of relationships gone wrong, of people hating you or rejecting you, in the center of all of it, the psalmist says, is the reality of God. He utters his voice and things melt, that he's the most real. The difference between God as concept and God as reality is this. A concept can't be with you, it can't comfort you, it can't be a fortress to you, but the reality of God can be. And the reality of God is shown in his voice. He speaks and it reorders everything. What he speaks affects and reorders the world, according to the psalmist. So here's the question for us as we end 2025 and go into the new year. Is God just a concept to us? Is he a thought, or is he a world reordering reality who, when he speaks, it melts away hardness of heart? When he speaks, it melts away our pride. When he speaks, it melts away our apathy. When he speaks, it melts away all that would stand opposed to him in us, that he would reorder us. Do you know his voice? Do you see his effects that are so real in everyday life that you can say, he's reordered me? Come, behold the works of the Lord, the psalmist says. How he has brought desolations on the earth. Concepts don't have works. Only realities do. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow. He shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Yahweh is in the business of making peace in a world of chaos, and he has real effects. He is reconciling the world, Paul says in Colossians, to himself through Christ. And so we might look at all that is still disordered and chaotic and think, well, he's not doing much. But that would be prideful, and that would be to assume that we have the full picture all the time. Yeah, it is God's work to make wars end, and there will be a day when they do forever. But the point the psalmist is making, who lives in the ancient Near East, one of the most violent contexts in world history, he says, here's the reality of God. He is actively working against the rage and upheaval of humans against one another. He's actively doing that, and then he says, be still and know that I'm God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. If God is a reality and not just a concept, two things happen in our lives that I pray happen for us in 2026. The first is we slow down. If he's not just a concept to you, if he's a reality greater than you, it causes us to slow down, to stop. We grow calm in his presence. We grow still and become aware. And two, he actually becomes most glorious to us. He becomes more exalted than any other reality. And so, if God's a reality, right, a sturdy one that is more sturdy than any other reality, not just a concept to us, it will be before such a great reality that we actually stop striving and become still, knowing who God is. That this is not a dread and a threat, but a reality that enables our whole nervous system to calm down. The fight and the flight and the freeze, they dissolve into rest before God. The God who is a reality that causes us to be still. Because he will relate to us as a fortress, as our security. And so he will be God in a way that actually causes you to be still. That's my prayer, that in this year we would continue to bear fruit as a church, but not from a frenetic need to produce, but the fruit would emerge from abiding. This is what Jesus says in John 15, abide in my love and you'll bear much fruit. That what happens for the people of God is when we're still and know who God is. That actually is the place from which he does the most work. And so he wants to be your fortress. He wants to be your place of security. And he wants you to say, I'm going to put down all my striving to secure myself and rest in the one God who is real. And when he's God, when he's real and not just a concept, it also leads to the second thing, which is he becomes exalted. He becomes so glorious. He becomes the most important thing. He becomes the reality greater than all other realities. In other words, the reality of God is heart affecting. He changes us. He changes and reorders the greatness scale in our life. I remember being a young pastor, really thinking like I needed to write books and be seen as someone with a great mind whose ideas were important, because somehow that would make me important. Well, it was pretty dumb and naive. But the reality was God had to confront me and show me that I actually wanted to be important for him more than I was in awe of the importance of him. And so that reordered a lot of my life in my late 20s and early 30s, where I became, over time, more overwhelmingly aware of who God was as what was most important, and it reordered what I previously thought was important. I'm sure you have a lot of things like that, and we all do. We continually think this is the most important thing. Just getting this promotion, doing this thing for my kid, doing whatever it becomes. Sometimes those things become ultimate, and we exalt ourselves or some effort of ours. And God's saying, look, when you're still and you know who I am, I'll actually be the most exalted reality in your life. And so the less I strove and the more I just knew him, the more still my heart was, and the less I cared about things I previously thought would give me importance, and the more exalted he became, and the more secure I was in just who he is. And that's the good news. God can be a reality to you, not just a concept. That's what the gospel's all about. The gospel is about God coming near to you and coming near to me. The God of the scriptures is not a concept. He's a reality. He's the reality. Let me just close with this story about Blaise Pascal. He was a French philosopher during the Enlightenment. And in fact, most of you probably encountered Pascal not in his spiritual writings, but probably in high school math class, because he was a great mind. But when he died, they found this little inscription sewed into his sleeve. You see, he had resisted Christ. He had held back on giving his life to the Lord. He had lots of work to do. He was important and esteemed and brilliant. And he was successful, but he was bothered, which is what success will often do to us. It shows us that the thing we've been chasing isn't really very fulfilling after all. And so one day he was reading the Gospels and he came across Peter's denials, the 3 denials of Christ at the end. And he realized, this is me. This is me. I'm ungrateful and I've been denying Christ my whole life, and I'm separated from my Creator. And in this one moment, upon reflection on the Gospels, he experiences profound desolation, realizing his farness from God, the distance in his life from him. But at the same time, he saw and experienced this true deliverance, this depth of forgiveness, that every wrong thought, every false word, everything he'd ever done was truly and freely forgiven. And so in that moment, he penned this little inscription that they found in his coat. It says, Year of Grace, 1654, Monday the 23rd, from about 10:30 at night until about 10:30 midnight, fire. Fire. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, not of the philosophers and the learned. Certitude, feeling, joy, peace. God of Jesus Christ, my God and your God. Your God will be my God. Forgetfulness of the world and everything except God. He is only found by the ways taught in the gospel. Grandeur of the human soul. Righteous Father, the world has not known you, but I have known you. Joy, joy, joy. Tears of joy. What happened for Pascal when he encountered not just a God concept, but God reality in the Gospels and the message of Christ and his forgiveness? He became a reality to Pascal in a heart-affecting way. He became still before God. He knew who he was, and God became the most exalted reality of his life. And he lived with that inscription every day in his coat. And this is the prayer for Emmaus, that we would live with God as reality, not just a concept. We're not just getting some community here at Emmaus. We're coming to center ourselves on the reality of God made flesh in Jesus Christ, crucified, raised, ascended, and coming again. And my deep prayer for us that this would be a year where that reality deepens and continues to order and reorder every one of us from top to bottom. And so you can be still this year with God. Do a Bible read through. Join us in reading Scripture and getting to know God by the story he tells. We'll have links in the app for ways to join for a Bible read through throughout the year. The other way you can exalt his name is seriously pray about inviting somebody to Alpha this year. It's a way to say, God's most important in my life, and I so desperately want him to be most important in the lives of those I love. What would it look like this year if the God of the Scriptures was not just a concept, but your overarching reality? A real refuge and fortress, really in our midst, really a help in trouble, and really the joy of your life. That is my prayer for us as we turn the corner into a new year. We love you. I'm so glad that I have the privilege of walking alongside you, and I'm looking forward to turning our Bibles open to Daniel chapter 1 on January 4th. We'll see you really soon.